We are 4 days away from the Iowa caucuses as I write this, and people are going to start voting. Yay! Yay! People are voting. Yay! Except for all those early states where they've already voted. Like and subscribe and hate and comment below. This is my predictions on the Iowa caucus. First in the caucus nation, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Donald Trump wins the Republican caucus. All right, video over. No? Okay, you want the Democratic side? Okay. So I'm going to break this down into 3 groups. And there will be a video at the end that I'll link to about why Iowa is really going to be more chaotic than normal. But I'm going to try to give a little bit of an overview over the 3 voting counts that are going to come out there. Alrighty, so I'm going to break this down into 3 groups. So the first group is going to be the completely unviable candidates. That means these are candidates that will not trigger 15%, which is what is needed to be deemed viable in the democratic process. Andrew Young, Stoyer, Gabbard, and even though he will spend $10 million on Super Bowl Sunday, Michael Bloomberg, because he's not competing in Iowa. So there are going to be people that are going to be in those caucuses who are somewhere between 0 and 6% of each one of the 4 candidates. They're not going to be viable, I don't think, anywhere in the state of Iowa. They are going to need to go into one of these other groupings. Now, the second grouping is the viable groups. There are 3 candidates that are going to be in that group. Amy Klobuchar, depending on your polling, is somewhere between 8 and 13%. Mayor Pete, depending on your polling, is somewhere between 11 and 19. And Elizabeth Warren, who is still falling off of a cliff, somewhere between 10 and 18%. Depending on which caucus they go to, again, you need 15% to be viable in that first vote. 1, 2, or maybe all 3 will not be viable. Now, if all of them are not viable, that is probably the best case scenario for Joe Biden. If all of them are viable, that's probably the best case scenario for Bernie Sanders. And of course, the top candidates, which are Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. Depending on your polling, they kind of flip back and forth. Both are usually within the margin of error, somewhere between 20 and 30%. But again, Iowa is tricky. So again, there is that viability thing. They have 49 total delegates. They get 41 that are divided amongst different districts in the state, and then the state party apparatus picks 8. All of it is proportional representation. 40 of it is proportional representation by congressional district or an at-large, and then the proportional district goal thingy with the 8 that they choose. But again, the Iowa caucus doesn't actually pick the delegates to the national. They pick out delegates to go to a state convention. Shaking your head as I am. So here's what's going to happen. Again, they're going to report all 3 numbers this time. The first bout of rounding, first result of the vote, I think are going to have Biden behind Bernie Sanders. I think more likely than not, Amy Klobuchar will be not very viable in at least 2 of the 4 congressional districts. I don't think she'll have any that'll hit more than a handful of the state delegates. The other 2 congressional districts, I think she will be a little bit more viable than Warren. Most of that vote, I would think, would go towards Joe Biden. I don't think there's going to be a lot of crossover for Mayor Pete if he's viable in those districts. Possibly Elizabeth Warren. Not much for Sanders. She doesn't seemingly have a great relationship, or at least her followers don't. And Sanderites don't really do a good job of bringing in that vote. Warren will be tricky as to where her votes will go. Politically, they may align more to Sanders, but and a lot of that vote has already been carved out. The part that is still viable, or the part that's still with her that is deemed not viable, I don't think that falls over to Sanders. I think some of that's going to go to Mayor Pete. I think some of that will go to Klobuchar if she's available. A lot of that's going to go to Biden. And then Mayor Pete. Mayor Pete's going to be the tricky one. There are going to be whole precincts where he may be in first. There's going to be whole precincts where he's going to be unviable. I don't know where that vote's necessarily going to go. I'm going to think that some of that is going to go to Bernie Sanders because they may be the least used to the process. Some are going to up and leave, and some of them are going to go to Joe Biden. Yes, some of them are going to leave. Some candidates, you are not stuck there for the 2 hours of the second vote, or however long it takes. Then there's the second vote. In the second vote, I imagine that Bernie Sanders, because most of his votes are very young, the 18 to 29-year-old group, if they will concentrate in college towns, and as long as the other three candidates, if at least two, if not all three, are unviable in those college towns, college precincts, Bernie Sanders will end up with the most national delegates, and Joe Biden will end up with the most votes, possibly the most delegates to the state convention. Overall, I think how this is going to break down on TV, Bernie will win the first vote. Biden will probably come in second in that vote, but first in the aggregate vote. Delegate breakdown, though, Bernie will come in first, Biden will come in second, Mayor Pete will come in third. I think Elizabeth Warren comes in fourth. I don't think Amy Klobuchar gets a delegate, though. There will be definitely spots where she does hit that threshold in parts of the precincts. She may get 1 or 2 or 3% of the delegates to the Iowa State Convention. How does that relate to New Hampshire? That will give Bernie Sanders a boost. That'll give Joe Biden a little bit of a boost. And the best thing, much like in 2008, where John McCain really didn't compete in Iowa, you had the upset with Governor Mike Huckabee winning that caucus. John McCain got to go to New Hampshire and go, I'm still here, and won that. Of course, won the Republican nomination. I think something similar could happen with Bloomberg, but again, he needs to survive New Hampshire. New Hampshire will be another video. As long as Sanders wins the early states, that's probably the only chance that Bloomberg has. So like and subscribe. I don't know. Well, Tulsi Gabbard will continue into New Hampshire. That's where more of her support comes from. And then the other billionaire, Tom Steiner, is looking at South Carolina. That is his firewall. Elizabeth Warren and Mayor Pete will continue to New Hampshire. I think one, if not two of them, will be dead after New Hampshire if they do not significantly do well in this caucus. So the real wild card here is Mayor Pete. If he can get more viability in more precincts, he can come in a respectable third, which could be a ticket into New Hampshire and into the rest of the election. I don't think he will do much after South Carolina and Super Tuesday. I think he's screwed, but we'll see. So like and subscribe, hate and comment. If you want to know more about the Iowa confusion that I'm trying to explain, go up here. If you want my Super Bowl picks, go up here. And like and subscribe here and other videos there. Bye.